All right, so diving right in, today we're looking at the future of the Pushpa franchise. And this is based on a really interesting Bollywood Hungama article. So get this, the makers of Pushpa 2, The Rule, they've got their sights set on the 2025 Oscars. Now, you and I both, we follow this stuff pretty closely.
Yeah.
So I got to ask, is this just hype or are they really serious?
Oh, they're definitely serious about this. I mean, remember last year? RRR took the Oscars by storm. That wasn't just a win, that was like a seismic shift. The entire game for Indian cinema has changed, and Pushpa 2 is looking to ride that wave.
Yeah, but going for an Oscar, that's not just about making a good film, right? It's a whole different beast. What's got Pushpa 2 thinking they actually have a shot?
Well, the article mentions this huge 10-city U.S. tour they're planning, with Allu Arjun himself leading the charge. It's an aggressive move for sure, but think about it, Indian cinema has always had a presence in the West, often through smaller niche channels. Pushpa 2 is going full Hollywood blockbuster here. They're trying to grab everyone's attention.
10 cities. This article even named a few: Los Angeles, New York, Boston. Are those the right cities to hit, though? From your experience, what's the actual playbook for an Oscar campaign? Because just being in America doesn't give you a statue, does it?
No, it's about targeting the right tastemakers. Think of it like a political campaign. You need to sway voters, in this case, Academy members. LA, New York, they're hubs for media critics, and of course, those all-important voters. The article also mentions lobbying efforts, which is key. You need people on the ground, building relationships, reminding voters about your film. It's a delicate dance, really.
So it's not just Allu Arjun showing up, flashing that superstar smile.
Right.
There's a whole machinery behind it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Allu Arjun, the article highlights his global popularity. Is that really a factor when we're talking Oscars, or is the Academy above all that fan stuff?
It is a factor, but in a nuanced way. Sure, the Academy wants to recognize artistic merit, but they're not immune to buzz. A globally recognized star brings attention, generates conversation, and that can translate into nominations. Think about it, if someone like Leo DiCaprio champions a film, people pay attention. Allu Arjun, especially after the success of Pushpa, The Rise, he's got that same potential.
Okay, so this isn't just about winning an award, it's about turning Pushpa into a global brand, right?
Exactly. The article even mentions Pushpa 3, The Rampage, so they're already thinking franchise. A successful Oscar campaign elevates the entire brand, making it more attractive to international distributors, investors, you name it. It's a long-term play.
Clever. And speaking of long-term plays, let's not forget about Netflix. The article says Pushpa 2 will be on Netflix, just 8 weeks after hitting theaters. Now, I gotta ask, is that too soon? Won't it hurt their box office numbers?
It's a calculated risk. But remember, streaming data is increasingly valuable. For awards consideration, getting on a platform like Netflix, with its massive global reach, exposes Pushpa 2 to a wider audience, potentially generating more buzz and critical acclaim.
Whoa. So they're playing both sides, the theatrical release for that traditional prestige and the streaming release for wider reach and awards buzz. It's like a pincer move. But this whole Oscar thing, the article quotes a trade expert who calls it a long shot. I mean, honestly, how much of a chance do they really have?
Well, historically, Indian films have had limited success at the Oscars, often relegated to the Best International Feature category. But RRR broke that mold. It proved that Indian cinema can compete in major categories, so Pushpa 2 has a tougher path. But it's not impossible.
So what are the factors that could really tip the scales in their favor? What's the magic formula for Pushpa 2? To not just be an Indian blockbuster, but an Oscar contender?
That's a great question, and it's one we need to unpack carefully. First, the film itself has to be stellar. Not just good, but something that resonates with audiences worldwide, transcends cultural barriers, packs that emotional punch. Think about films like Parasite, Roma, Universal Stories, but deeply rooted in their specific cultures.
So Pushpa 2 needs that same balance.
Yeah.
Indian soul, but universal appeal. But even if the film is amazing, that's not enough, right?
Right.
What about the whole Oscar campaign we were talking about? How do they make sure people actually see the film, let alone vote for it?
That's where this U.S. tour comes in, not just being in America, but being strategic. Premiere screenings, Q&As, getting the film in front of the right eyes. It's about creating a narrative around the film, building momentum at the right time. Think of it like a perfectly timed wave, cresting right when voting starts.
Okay, so picture this. The film is incredible. The buzz is building. Allu Arjun is charming everyone. Still, there's this whole perception of what an Oscar film is, right? Often it's very Western-centric. How does Pushpa 2 break through that?
That's the challenge. It's about shifting perceptions. showing that excellence isn't limited to one type of cinema. The Academy, they're looking for films that push boundaries, tell compelling stories. Pushpa 2 needs to showcase that Indian cinema can do all that, and maybe even something more.
So it's bigger than just one film, one award. It's about challenging the status quo, expanding what people think cinema can be. Now that's a mission.
Absolutely. And for you listening to this, here's what to consider. We're witnessing a potential turning point, not just for Pushpa, but for Indian cinema as a whole. This could be the start of something huge.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. From the nitty-gritty of Oscar campaigns to the grand vision of Indian cinema on the world stage. But we're not done yet. There's still more to this story. Let's take a quick breather and then come back to explore what the Pushpa phenomenon means for the future for all of us.
You know, it's fascinating to think about how much the industry has changed. Even in the last few years. Remember when going straight to Netflix was seen as a bad thing? For a film's prestige?
Totally. The article even mentioned that Pushpa 2 will be available dubbed in multiple languages. They're really going for that global audience. But isn't there a risk that something gets lost in translation? I mean, Pushpa is so deeply rooted in its Indian context.
It's a balancing act for sure. Subtitles and dubbing are essential for accessibility, but you don't want to dilute the cultural essence. The best films manage to transcend language barriers. Think about Parasite Roma. They were both subtitled, but their themes resonated universally.
I see. It's not about erasing the Indian elements, it's about making them accessible.
Right.
So the story, the characters, that raw Pushpa energy, that needs to shine through no matter what language someone's watching it. But even with subtitles. Even on Netflix, there's still a hurdle, right? Not everyone is open to watching foreign films. How do you change that mindset?
That's where critical acclaim and awards buzz play a crucial role. Think about it. When a film wins an Oscar, it becomes a talking point, a must-see. Suddenly, people who wouldn't normally watch a subtitled Indian film are intrigued. It's like a stamp of approval, a bridge to a wider audience.
So the Oscars aren't just about the golden statue. They're about changing perceptions, opening doors. Speaking of opening doors, this article mentions Pushpa 2's budget being significantly higher than the first film. Are they betting the farm on this Oscar campaign? Is this a risky move?
It's ambitious, no doubt, but remember the first Pushpa was a massive hit. They're not starting from scratch. They've got a proven formula, a dedicated fan base, and now they're aiming for a wider audience. It's a calculated risk, but one with high potential rewards.
Okay, so they've got the resources, the talent, the strategy. But you've seen countless films come and go. What's the X factor? What makes some films break through and become global phenomena, while others just fizzle out?
It's a combination of factors, really. A perfect storm. Of course, the film itself has to be exceptional. Compelling story, great acting, stunning visuals, all that. But it also needs that spark of originality, something that captures the zeitgeist, that makes people say, you have to see this.
That's what Pushpa, the Rise had, right? That swagger, that energy, it was infectious. But can they replicate that magic in the sequel?
That's the million-dollar question. Sequels are notoriously tricky, but if they can capture that same essence, that unique Pushpa flavor, and amplify it for a global audience, well, they might just have something truly special.
All right, so we've got a potential masterpiece, a savvy marketing campaign, and a charismatic star leading the charge. What else do they need to crack the code of the Oscars? Is there some secret handshake, some unspoken rule?
There's no secret handshake, but there's an understanding of what the Academy values. Films that are technically brilliant, emotionally resonant, and thematically relevant. Films that say something about the human condition, that spark conversations.
So it's not just about entertainment, it's about impact. Pushpa 2 needs to make people feel something, make them think. That's a tall order.
It is, but you know what's truly fascinating here is that Pushpa 2 isn't just aiming for Western validation. It's about showcasing Indian storytelling, Indian talent on a global stage. It's about pride, about representation.
That's so powerful. And it makes this whole Oscar campaign even more intriguing. It's not just about winning an award, it's about changing the narrative, expanding the definition of what great cinema can be.
Precisely. And for you listening to this, think about this. How often do we see stories from outside the Western lens, celebrated on a global stage? Pushpa 2 is challenging those norms, and that in itself is a victory.
I love that perspective. It's about more than just one film, one award. It's about a shift in the cultural landscape. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about Oscar strategies, global ambitions, and the power of representation. But there's still one piece of the puzzle we need to examine. the impact of this Pushpa phenomenon. What does it all mean for the future of Indian cinema? So we've talked about Pushpa 2's ambitions, their strategy, even the cultural impact. But let's get down to brass tacks. If they do manage to pull this off, if an Indian film becomes a major player at the Oscars, what are the ripple effects? What happens next?
That's the exciting part. Think of it as a domino effect. Success breeds imitation. If Pushpa 2 proves that Indian cinema can capture a global audience and garner critical acclaim, other filmmakers will be inspired to follow suit. We might see a surge in films with international ambitions, higher production values, stories tailored for a broader audience.
So it's like raising the bar for the whole industry, not just in terms of spectacle, but in storytelling, in craft.
Right.
But could there be a downside? What if this push for global appeal ends up homogenizing Indian cinema, losing that unique flavor we were talking about?
That's a valid concern. It's a delicate balance. The key is to embrace global opportunities without sacrificing cultural authenticity. The stories, the characters, the themes, they should remain rooted in the Indian experience, even while resonating with a wider audience.
So it's not about becoming Hollywood, it's about bringing India to Hollywood, showcasing the richness and diversity of Indian storytelling on a global platform. But what about the audience? You mentioned that not everyone is open to watching foreign films.
Yeah.
How do you bridge that gap? Is it just a matter of exposure?
Exposure is certainly key, but it's also about changing perceptions, breaking down stereotypes and preconceived notions about what Indian cinema is. Many people still associate it with Bollywood musicals, but there's so much more to offer. Thrillers, dramas, comedies, sci-fi. Indian cinema is a vast and vibrant landscape.
And Pushpa, with its action-packed, stylish approach, might be the perfect gateway drug. Get people hooked on the energy, the spectacle, and then open their eyes to the whole world of Indian storytelling. It's almost like a Trojan horse strategy.
I like that analogy. It's about using familiarity to introduce something new, to challenge preconceived notions. And the beauty of platforms like Netflix is that they make it so easy to discover content from different cultures. One click and you're transported to a whole new world.
So this could be a game changer, not just for filmmakers, but for audiences too, expanding horizons, fostering cross-cultural understanding, appreciating the beauty of stories from around the world. It's like a cultural exchange program, but with popcorn.
Exactly. And for you listening to this, think about how this shift in cinema might impact your viewing habits. Will you be more open to exploring films from different cultures? Will you seek out stories that challenge your perspectives, expand your understanding of the world?
It's a fascinating question. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's clear that the Pushpa phenomenon is more than just a film franchise. It's a symbol of ambition, of change, of the power of storytelling to transcend borders and connect us all.
I couldn't agree more. It's a story worth watching unfold, both on screen and in the wider cultural landscape.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of Pushpa. We've covered a lot of ground today, from Oscar campaigns to cultural shifts, and I hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you.
And to you listening out there, keep exploring, keep challenging your perspectives, and keep diving deep into the stories that make us human. Until next time, keep those subtitles on.